Ben-Hur isn't just one of the greatest movies ever made, it's a defining moment in film history. Even after 66 years, it still sets the bar for epic filmmaking, the kind of spectacle that reminds us why movies exist in the first place. Stick around because we're about to explore the incredible film craft that makes Ben-Hur the film equivalent of a monument painted with light. Let's start with the aspect ratio. Even if you know little about films, you'll notice the frame is sort of wider than the typical movie, wider than anamorphic even. Why did they make that choice? In the 1950s, widescreen formats were box office draws, and Cinerama was the rage. MGM was going out of business and desperately needed a hit. They wanted to create a film event like none other. They didn't want to film in Cinerama due to its limited release potential. They approached Panavision with a wish list, leading to the development of what became MGM Camera 65 or Ultra Panavision 70. The system was so laborious and expensive that only about 10 films were shot with it. In the decade it was popular. The format used 65mm film, but with an anamorphic lens with a squeeze factor of 1.25. Each lens of the custom-designed 6-lens kit cost about $100,000 in 1959 money. These lenses are the legendary Panavision APO Panatar. When the 70mm format with its aspect ratio of 2.2:1 is de-squeezed by 1.25, you get a breathtaking 2.76:1 aspect ratio. This is so why director William Wyler didn't know what to do with it at first. But if there was a director who could take up the challenge, it was him. After all, Wyler was an assistant director on the 1929 version of Ben-Hur, of which the 1959 version was a remake. Cinematographer Robert Surtees was the right person to get his vision to work. Their mandate together was to make the visuals so epic it would put everything else before it to shame. Wyler's use of deep focus and long takes allowed actors to move within detailed spaces. There's so many things happening in every scene. If you rewatch the movie a second or third time, you'll pick up more and more details. The immersion is staggering. Surtees and Wyler overcame depth of field and framing issues by carefully composing scenes that balanced foreground and background elements. This is a lot harder than it seems, because the film stock they used only had an ASA rating of 25, which is about an ISO 50, according to Kodak, and it had a fine-grained structure but a very low light sensitivity. The light levels they would have to film in was insane. The typical aperture they needed to keep everything sharp was between t5.6 and t11. That's scary even with modern cameras and lights. One cool compositional technique they used was diagonal framing. This allowed them to rack focus from foreground to background without making everything appear tacky. It also gave the frames incredible depth. Reminds me of the famous film quote from Jurassic Park, "We spared no expense." In the shadow areas, the film stock had less latitude. If you notice the last few scenes without a lot of fill light, the frames just go to deep black. However, the sharpness and color are unmatched. If you want to get the same look today, you'd have a hard time just coming close. Imagine filming for months in Rome as the weather changed. The color of sunlight changed throughout the day. They were filming for long hours in 3 units. Surtees had to calculate the color temperature of the scene and then balance that with color filters to maintain color tones. Thinking about it is painful, imagine doing it. Ben-Hur was filmed largely on massive outdoor sets and locations in Rome. Large diffusion screens were often used to soften shadows and give scenes a painterly look. There's so many breathtakingly gorgeous compositions, you could pause the film and just marvel at the image. The lighting style is so modern-like and natural. The backgrounds are lit with as much care as the foreground. The sheer resolution of the Ultra Panavision 70 format, which could theoretically capture up to 8K, ensured that the massive sets, costumes, and performances were all rendered in lifelike clarity. Everything had to be perfect or it would look cheap. The film's art direction was like a war operation, with millions of props and constructions never seen before in cinema. The reds of the Roman banners contrast sharply with the white robes of Judah Ben-Hur, symbolizing the clash between oppression and resistance. The symbolism in the movie is subtle but powerful. Let me point out just one powerful thread running through the film: water. It's a symbol of salvation. Every time someone is parched, physically or spiritually, a savior appears. This also happens when Ben-Hur rescues Arius at sea, where he is the savior. Later, Ben-Hur tries to return the gesture to Christ, but doesn't succeed. It didn't matter because in the world of Ben-Hur, Christ is the ultimate savior, and it is water that delivers the final miracle. Even though some have complained about the pacing, the film's two climaxes hit equally hard, in different ways. The 9-minute chariot race sequence is one of the most electrifying action scenes in film history. It was directed by Andrew Martin with the legendary Yakima Cannon and took 5 months to film. To capture the intensity and speed of the race, the production utilized 3 cameras on a moving car rig. To make things harder, the car was slower than the horses. The anamorphic format also had one problem. You can't focus close, so they had to experiment until they found the right distance, lens, and speed to work in. They were filming at breakneck speeds, but with a frame rate of 20 frames per second to make things look even more chaotic. The two directors first filmed the wide shots and showed it to Wyler, and then they decided the number and type of close-ups that would be required for maximum impact. The icing on the cake is the sound design and music. When the life-size dummies are trampled underneath the chariots, it takes your breath away. The set was at the time the largest set ever built, with 1,500 extras in the stands every day. The entire movie used hundreds of camels, thousands of horses, and tens of thousands of extras. While watching Ben-Hur, you can feel and see every one of them. It was the biggest budgeted film at the time at $15 million, which is about $200 million or so in today's money. Can the same film be made for $200 million today? I doubt it. The biggest miracle might be that, despite the scale and chaos of the production, no cast or crew or animals lost their lives, except for one, producer Sam Zimbalist, who died of a heart attack during filming. In many ways, Ben-Hur was just as much Zimbalist's film as it was William Wyler's. He was everywhere, overseeing all 3 units, holding the vision together, and making sure the final result felt like one grand unified epic. To give you an idea of just how sprawling this production was, Wyler didn't even see the chariot race fully edited with music and sound until the press screening. That's how much trust he had in the team Zimbalist helped build. The score by Miklos Rozsa is another irreplaceable element in Ben-Hur. The grandeur of his compositions, recorded in rich 6-track stereo sound, adds pathos and gravitas to the visual spectacle. His themes carry the emotional weight of each scene, which works big time in the second climax, the trial and crucifixion of Christ. There's barely any dialogue in the sequence, which follows right after the thunderous energy of the chariot race. And yet, thanks to the score, the second climax resonates just as powerfully. Ben-Hur feels like a thinking man's epic. They shot mountains of film, and there were no moviolas that could edit 70mm, so the editing deserves a special mention. The first cut was over 4 hours long, and they brought it down to a length that included an overture and an intermission. You knew you were in for a treat when you purchased tickets to watch Ben-Hur. But here's a question for you. Was filming in 2.76:1 the right choice though? The narrow frame makes Ben-Hur practically unwatchable on a phone or laptop, and sadly, that's how most people see movies today. But Ben-Hur was made for something bigger. It was such a big hit, it saved MGM from bankruptcy. Back then, studios had to fight off the rise of television by giving people a reason to dress up and leave their homes. We're talking 100-foot screens in grand theaters that seated over 1,000 people. Did the studios learn from that era? Of course not. Their greed eventually killed the very thing that made movies magical. They chopped up those beautiful single-screen palaces to build boxy little multiplexes with dinky 30-foot screens. And now that streaming is threatening their business, they're stuck. They killed the golden goose: big screens, thunderous sound, and a packed audience laughing, crying, and cheering together. That was cinema. Now it's just content. The spectacle's gone, and they can't bring it back. Even if someone remade Ben-Hur today, or better yet, re-released the original, you can't enjoy half the impact the original had. Imagine watching the chariot race or the sea battle. Speaking of the sea battle, it wasn't even in the script. It was filmed using miniature ships in a huge tank. An artificial lake with equipment capable of generating sea-sized waves was built at the studio in Rome to accommodate the galleys. A massive backdrop was erected to hide the city and hills in the background. For other scenes, they used matte paintings to fill in the rest. The amount of effort that went into Ben-Hur is mind-numbing. Every casting decision feels right because they spent months finding the right actors. William Wyler, being the perfectionist he was hard on his actors, and they had to repeat many takes to get the language and performances right. Charles Heston is on record saying he didn't enjoy the experience at all. but he won an Oscar. Ben-Hur walked away with 11 Oscars. The only gripe I have is the credits. Surtees' credit is like an afterthought, and Andrew Martin has no special mention as having directed the chariot race. It should tell you a lot about egos. Anyway, to answer the question, why does Ben-Hur still look like $1 trillion? It's the result of a grand, uncompromising artistic vision, technical innovation, and sheer dedication by thousands of people. William Wyler and MGM had a dream, and they doubled and tripled down on it. They staked everything on it, and it paid off. If most of the films on Earth were destroyed and we had to pick one candidate to send to space for a future alien race or something, I wouldn't be mad if it were Ben-Hur. Even if all the aliens have are mobile phone screens. Please, for the love of all things epic, watch Ben-Hur on the biggest screen you can find, with speakers that shake your walls and maybe scare your neighbors. Then do the right thing. Watch my next video on that same glorious setup. Or hey, rewatch this one. Or binge them all. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss my next big video.